June 17, 1940. Paris, France. The city that once shimmered with light and laughter now trembled under the weight of fear. French civilians moved through the streets like shadows, their eyes darting at every distant rumble of engines, every faint echo of marching boots. Newspapers were plastered with headlines of surrender, and whispers spread faster than the German tanks rolling toward the outskirts. Families huddled behind curtains, unsure whether to pray, flee, or fight. Every street corner held the tension of waiting, every café table the silent dread of knowing life would never be the same. In the heart of the city, young men and women debated in hushed tones whether they would stay, resist, or escape. Some believed surrender was the only choice, while others quietly questioned the officers who had abandoned them. Amid the chaos, the first seeds of the French resistance took root. Ordinary citizens, shopkeepers, clerks, students, began sharing coded messages and planning secret gatherings. Their courage flickered quietly, but it was there, hidden in the shadows. Meanwhile, German scouts prowled through neighborhoods, marking the city for occupation. Soldiers under Guderian's command reported back with precision, their eyes scanning for signs of defiance. Civilians held their breath as the familiar streets transformed into a tense chessboard of survival. The emotional weight of betrayal hung in the air. Mothers clutched children tighter, lovers lingered in fear, and friends wondered who might betray them first. Outside the city, France's allies in Britain prepared to continue the fight. The contrast between surrender and resistance created a chasm of hope and despair that would define this pivotal moment. Before we go deeper, make sure you subscribe. This story only gets darker from here. London buzzed with a different kind of tension. While Paris cowered under surrender, Britain stood defiantly against the storm. In the war rooms beneath the city, Churchill and his generals pored over maps, their faces lit by the dim glow of lamps and the pressure of impossible decisions. The air smelled faintly of smoke and ink, a constant reminder that the fate of Europe teetered on the edge of a knife. Civilians in the streets felt it too. Air raid sirens had become routine, but the news of France's surrender hit harder than any bomb. People stopped in their tracks, staring at radios that carried the voices of Churchill and military dispatches. Some shook their heads in disbelief, others clenched their fists, determined not to let fear take hold. Across the Channel, they could see the tragedy unfolding in Paris, yet they understood that Britain's survival would shape the next steps of the war. Military advisors like General Bernard Montgomery and General Alan Brooke debated strategies, their voices tense but measured. Plans for evacuation, reinforcement, and counterattacks filled the room, but time was always a cruel enemy. Civilians and soldiers alike held on to hope that Britain's resolve could turn the tide, even as news of French cities falling to German forces streamed in. In London's cafés and pubs, refugees from France whispered stories of despair and disbelief. Families clung to each other, finding solace in shared grief but drawing strength from Britain's determination to fight on. The contrast between the fallen streets of Paris and the stubborn courage of London created a quiet urgency, one that would shape the destiny of nations. Every moment carried suspense. Would Britain hold, alone against Hitler's advancing forces? The answer was uncertain, but one thing was clear: resistance was not just a strategy, it was a moral line that could not be crossed. Paris had fallen into a strange, uneasy quiet. The once bustling streets now carried a heavy tension, as if the city itself were holding its breath. Civilians moved cautiously, exchanging quick, hushed words. Every glance, every gesture could signal defiance or betrayal. Mothers pulled children close, shopkeepers shuttered their windows, and young men and women slipped through narrow alleys, their eyes sharp for any sign of danger. Among them, a small group of determined Parisians met in secret. These were the first sparks of the resistance, ordinary citizens who refused to accept surrender as the end of their story. They passed notes hidden in bread loaves, whispered warnings behind closed doors, and plotted escape routes for those who wanted to fight another day. The risk was enormous. German patrols roamed the city, their boots echoing on cobblestones like a constant reminder of the peril surrounding them. Emotion ran high. Some volunteers trembled with fear, others burned with frustration, angry at the government's capitulation. Every secret meeting carried the thrill of potential discovery. Would the next patrol spot them? Could a neighbor's curiosity betray their plans? Suspense clung to each step. Meanwhile, German officers under Rommel's and Guderian's command moved through the city with precision, establishing checkpoints and spreading fear. Civilians watched silently, calculating whom to trust and whom to avoid. Even the smallest act, a defiant glance, a hidden symbol, could mean life or death. Through it all, the human spirit flickered stubbornly. Ordinary Parisians, armed with nothing more than courage and conviction, began to weave the first threads of defiance. The streets whispered their stories of hope and danger, telling a tale that would ripple far beyond the city itself. While civilians whispered in the shadows, French officers wrestled with the weight of surrender. Command rooms across the country were filled with maps, radios, and grim faces. Orders had been given to lay down arms, yet many officers couldn't shake the sense of unfinished duty. Pride, loyalty, and shame collided in their minds, leaving them trapped between obedience and the urge to resist. Some quietly gathered in makeshift offices, debating the future. Should they obey the government, or secretly join forces with Britain? Charles de Gaulle, now in London, was sending messages to rally those willing to fight on. His voice carried determination and a promise. The fight was not over. Officers knew that every choice could change lives, both their own and the civilians depending on them. Across the northern forts and remaining defensive positions, scattered troops waited. Many felt abandoned, the surrender announcement striking like a punch to the gut. General Vagon and other leaders tried to maintain discipline, but fear seeped into the ranks. Small units made their own decisions. Some chose retreat, some considered desertion, and a few quietly plotted to link up with British forces. Every moment was tense. Intelligence reports from German commanders, including Guderian, tracked troop movements meticulously. Any misstep could be fatal. Officers moved with quiet urgency, balancing risk and morality. In these rooms of strategy and strategy alone, history was quietly being rewritten, one hesitant decision at a time. The stakes were clear. Surrender meant survival, but defiance might mean honor or death. Every choice carved a path that would ripple through Paris, through occupied France, and across the Channel. In the hidden corners of Paris, a quiet rebellion began to take shape. Basements, abandoned cellars, and back rooms became secret headquarters for ordinary people who refused to accept the occupation. Shopkeepers, students, and clerks joined forces with early resistance leaders, working together to pass messages, hide escapees, and gather intelligence. Each act was small, but each carried enormous risk. The city above moved with cautious normalcy, but below the streets, plans were unfolding. Secret printing presses churned out leaflets encouraging defiance, and coded signals slipped unnoticed through the cracks of the city. Every night carried suspense. A German patrol might stumble across a meeting, a neighbor could betray a trusted friend, and a single misstep could destroy months of preparation. Yet the courage of these civilians burned quietly but fiercely. Tensions rose when rumors of infiltration surfaced. Someone inside a cell might be passing information to the occupiers. Fear and suspicion mingled with bravery, forcing leaders to make quick, sometimes harsh decisions. But even as danger tightened its grip, the resistance grew bolder. They sabotaged supply lines, relayed vital intelligence to London, and left small signs of defiance for other Parisians to see. A mark on a wall, a dropped note, a daring act in broad daylight. The human spirit proved resilient. Each small victory, each successful escape, reinforced hope and determination. Lives were on the line, yet every ordinary citizen who joined the effort became part of a larger story. A story of courage, loyalty, and the quiet power of people determined to fight back against impossible odds. Paris had become a city of divided hearts. As the German occupation tightened, civilians faced impossible choices. Every day, people weighed survival against conscience, loyalty against fear. Neighbors who once shared coffee now watched each other cautiously, wondering who could be trusted. The line between friend and foe blurred, and one wrong move could cost a life. In quiet apartments and shuttered homes, families debated whether to cooperate with the occupiers to protect themselves or secretly aid the resistance. Some worked for the Germans, delivering supplies or information under duress. Others smuggled messages, food, or escape routes, risking torture or execution. Each choice carried guilt, anxiety, and the heavy weight of responsibility. German officers, including Rommel and local commanders, moved through the city with calculated precision, probing for signs of defiance. Every checkpoint, patrol, and inspection became a moment of suspense. Civilians learned to watch, listen, and act with careful strategy. Even small gestures, a hidden package, a coded glance, could tip the balance. Trust became a rare commodity. Allies might betray one another. Neighbors might inform on each other to save themselves. But amid this tension, ordinary Parisians discovered resilience. Courage appeared in unexpected places: a shopkeeper hiding documents, a student carrying intelligence to London, or a mother silently defying orders to protect a stranger. In a city where survival and principle constantly collided, choices defined character. Every whispered secret, every hidden action, became part of a larger, dangerous story, one where loyalty, courage, and cunning would decide who lived, who resisted, and who was forever changed. Far across the Channel, Charles de Gaulle's voice rang out over crackling radio waves. From London, he reached into occupied France, calling on soldiers, officers, and civilians alike to continue the fight. His words were urgent, defiant, and full of hope. Surrender was not the end, resistance was still possible. For many Parisians, hearing his message sparked a flicker of courage in the darkness. Back in the city, ordinary people listened carefully, weighing the risks. Some officers hesitated, unsure whether to leave their families behind or join the call to action. Others made quiet decisions, slipping away under cover of night to rendezvous with resistance cells or flee to ports where Britain's navy waited. Every step was a gamble, every choice a moral test. Meanwhile, British officers monitored the situation closely. General Montgomery and other commanders coordinated with de Gaulle, sending supplies, intelligence, and encouragement to those willing to rise against the occupiers. London itself became a hub of hope, planning, and preparation, a beacon for those who refused to accept defeat. The suspense was constant. Would enough people answer the call? Could resistance groups survive infiltration and betrayal? Civilians who had once felt powerless began to see themselves as part of a larger struggle. Ordinary lives intersected with extraordinary events, and every action, no matter how small, carried immense weight. In the shadows of occupied Paris, courage and strategy intertwined. The city's silent streets held the potential for audacious acts, and the next move by a single individual could tip the balance. De Gaulle's call was more than a message. It was a spark that could ignite a revolution in the hearts of the fallen city. Paris had changed forever. The streets that once rang with laughter now echoed with cautious footsteps, whispered warnings, and the occasional crackle of gunfire from daring acts of defiance. Occupation had made heroes of ordinary people, civilians who took incredible risks to protect lives, gather intelligence, and sabotage the enemy. Each small victory felt monumental, a reminder that even in the darkest times, courage could shine. In hidden corners, resistance cells carried out their plans with precision and bravery. Shopkeepers hid fugitives behind walls, students delivered messages in secret, and women managed supply lines that snuck past German checkpoints. Every act carried suspense. One wrong move could bring Gestapo attention, one misstep could cost lives. Yet these quiet heroes pressed on, motivated by loyalty, defiance, and hoped that their efforts could make a difference. Meanwhile, de Gaulle's messages continued to inspire both soldiers abroad and those still trapped in occupied France. Some officers who had hesitated now joined the effort, bringing experience and leadership to the fledgling resistance. Across the city, ordinary civilians who had once felt powerless realized they could shape history through courage, creativity, and daring. Even under the shadow of German patrols and the constant threat of betrayal, the human spirit refused to surrender. A single act of bravery, a sabotaged supply truck, a secret message, a hidden family, could ripple through the city and beyond, changing the course of events. Paris was a city under occupation, yet alive with resistance, hope, and the quiet determination of its people. If you want more WW2 stories like this, filled with hidden moments and untold perspectives, subscribe so you never miss the next chapter of history.